Today I have Simon Maple, one of the most positive people I know in this industry. I've worked with him at Sneak and now at Tessel, and every time I have an idea, I never hear a no from Simon. It's always a yes and even if like yes and let's do something else, it's always a yes, and it's a delightful to speak with you and to work with you, of course. We're going to talk about developer relations and how to do developer relations. But first, I want to start with about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Thank you for having me on. So yeah, I was kind of my career kind of was born in the engineering space, a big Java developer of 25 years plus, and did development at IBM on middleware platforms. And then I kind of I did a lot of work with customers. I did a number of fill-ins for people at conferences and things like that. And I thought, hey, do you know what? I really quite like this. And so I just lent much more into it. A role came up. It was a technical evangelism role back then in the I guess 2010-ish, about 15 years ago. And I thought, yeah, let's just do this. And I did it for a couple of years back at IBM, and then I just kind of thought, do you know what? I love doing this. I'm going to do it for a number of other companies. So this is now my third startup that I'm doing it for. I worked 6 years at Zero Turnaround on some JRebel low-level, Java productivity tooling. Then I did Sneak for about 6 years or so as well. And now, similar kind of thing at Tessel, building up DevRels and DevRel teams, being the kind of like 0 to 1 DevRel employee in the companies.
I love that. So let's start with that. Let's say you and I start a company. We should think about that in a few years,
Yeah.
not right now.
Is this going out? Because maybe we should talk about this seriously. Yeah.
But let's say we have we start a developer tool company or developer platform company, and you're the responsible for like the developer outreach, developer relations. How would you start? What would be the first month and how would you do it?
Yeah, really good question. And I think the reason why this is hard to answer is really because it depends. And you need to kind of like really understand what are the things that you are delivering for that company. What is that company trying to deliver? What space is it trying to deliver to? Is it an established space? What are the biggest needs right now for people who are trying to get closer to the technology, get closer to the company? And it's about focusing on those things first. It very much depends on the kind of like stage of the company as well. When I joined Sneak as a good example, they were a couple of years in. They were really getting close to a kind of PMF at the time. So it's really about how do we now increase the speed of that GTM? How do we increase the awareness around developer security and things like that? When I'm at Tessel right now, it is a whole new space around AI native, around how we introduce specs to people. So ultimately, there's a big awareness, trying to do a lot of thought leadership around the new space. So I think it's really about identifying what the immediate needs are of the company and the group, the team, and then focusing on those first. A lot of the time, people very much like dive straight into things like content. It could be how-tos. It could be that, let me tell you about this kind of range of new technologies, new approach. A lot of people will maybe start thinking about things like docs and things like, if you already have a product, the docs, the SDKs, how can I get people to see that value, to get that benefit as immediate as they can? And there are so many different aspects, from going out and speaking at conferences and meetups, building out those communities. It's really about trying to identify what is the thing that will get you that biggest win, and what is the biggest pain point that you have today for you, as well as your users who are trying to look at solutions like yourself.
I love that point because like there's so many things in developer relations and developer outreach that you could do. And the hardest thing is to choose what to do and what not to do, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
could write all the blogs. You could do the table stakes of onboarding developers. You could go to events and advocate. How do you choose what to do and what not to do in the beginning?
Oh gosh, it's so important. And at the start you said, Simon never says no. That's one of my biggest problems as well, right? Because a good friend of mine, Gaipo, kind of often says it's very easy to have that kind of almost like that distraction of, you know, Doug in Up, the dog in the Disney Pixar program, where every 5 minutes he goes squirrel, and he kind of like gets distracted every 5 seconds, right? The question isn't about can we do all these amazing things. The question is, what is the most impactful thing, and how much time do we need to spend in it to do it really well? And it's about kind of identifying what our capacity is in doing those things very, very well. There can be times when you actually ignore that rule a little bit, where actually what you're trying to do is create a huge impact and try and do as much as you can straight away for that biggest splash. But really, to kind of like grow, it's about making tough decisions. And sometimes the success of one thing is actually saying no to another. In order to, and it's very similar to what we said before, it's what is the biggest pain point? If a developer is just completely not aware of what we are doing or what we are standing for as a company, awareness is my biggest pain point. Okay, so I need to do a bunch of digital. I need to do some I need to do some articles. I need to, you know, if people aren't coming to our blog to read, can I get on other people's blogs in other people's communities? Digitally is the best way of kind of like getting that huge growth. If it's as an existing product, I need feedback. I need to go out and speak to people. I need to go out and get it in people's hands and see their reactions and pull that back to the development team and the engineers. If it's people are coming to our site but they can't get started, maybe it's an enablement problem. So it's all about identifying what is that friction, and how can I make sure that that developer who's on that journey is, you know, that biggest bit of early friction. How can I remove that? Once you've done that and that's good, it's just about finding what's the next piece of friction. Is it actually closer to our docs? Is it moving into the enterprise? Is it the real world implementation of that with real apps? And just fixing every kind of like issue or piece of friction that comes along. And again, that the solution to that may exist in many forms, or maybe you do awareness a little bit in person, a percentage over digital. And there's a balance, but it's absolutely about what you say no to rather than what you say yes to.
I love that. And one of the things that ties into what you're saying is that our mutual friend Gaipo, when he asked me to help a little bit with Sneak, he said, like, go through the flow and tell me where it's broken. And I literally wrote a document of saying, hey, I don't understand this. This is hard. This is why should I do this and why should I do that? And I think that was a clean way of showing where the hurdles and what is hard and what is not hard. And as developer advocates, we could actually use that, like go to developers, go through the flow and see where you see the blockage.
And the hardest thing is recognizing ourselves where that blockage is, because we have a lot of internal knowledge from seeing the product and using the product, and it's hard to reset and look at something again with fresh eyes, which is why we almost need to constantly give this to new users and listen to those users. Because what we learned 1 month ago, whether it's just industry knowledge or learnings from that individual, that actually people are a little bit more leveled up on AI or MCP servers or whatever the technology is, we actually maybe can make some assumptions about knowledge there, or maybe we actually do still need to go in and give people that balanced knowledge before they can get to the next step. Assumptions are the hardest things to drop, but very important to recognize.
So true. One of the things that we did at Slack was go into the tickets and see what are the biggest support tickets for developers and use that as a signal. And one of the things that we've seen is that, like, OAuth again and again was the biggest thing. Like, developers did not like to do their own OAuth flow, and we needed to help them with the OAuth flow and documentation. And there was so much to do there until we saw less and less tickets there.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important. And I'm actually doing this week. I wrote weirdly. I wrote a level 1 support bot. I've called it. It needs a catchier name, and I know naming's hard, but that's just an appalling support bot. Yeah. And the idea is, because a lot of us are in the UK and we're doing a launch soon, there are hours whereby I'm sure there are going to be people on the west coast of the US who, when they try the tool, aren't going to necessarily want to wait 4 or 5 hours for us to respond. So how do we capture the information, try and give some kind of support to those folks? And so what I did was I created a little Discord bot, and it uses the Gitbook MCP server to look through all our Gitbook documentation, provide an answer with sources as to what where we can actually grab the answers to that. And then after that, one of my thoughts was, well, what if the answer is in our minds but just not in the documentation? So I thought, well, maybe I should get that bot to look at what answers our team, myself and my team, and the engineers and everyone else, what answers are they giving? What answer would the bot have given? And for it to act as a judge to say, hey, there's a mismatch here between what I'm saying and what the actual user is saying. As a result, I'm going to make a suggestion to me or the team to make a change to the documentation to add this better answer. So now I've got this bot kind of almost taking those assumptions from us away and saying, these users are asking these things. I suggest you add these things into the FAQ or its own section into the docs. And it's funny how you kind of mentioned that, because it's exactly what I wrote this week to
that's amazing.
help improve.
And it ties into my next question, which is like, how do you scale? Because I think the bot is a great example of doing scalable things. And you've scaled developer relations organization from small companies to billions of dollars. How do you? So now we have a small developer relations organization, and how do we scale it to meet the needs of the growth of the company?
Yeah, really great question. And I think scale, there are a number of different ways in which we can scale. Like sometimes, as we will need to do with Tesla as we release, it's about, I need people in different locations. We are going to have a need for us to be in the US, a need for us to cover the US time zone. So what we actually need is individuals on the feet, on the ground in the US, so that they can actually go to the various groups, the various meetups and things like that, and conferences as well, because I don't want to have to travel, every 5 minutes, a 7-hour flight to the US to cover those types of things. There are other things in terms of simply, scale of content, for example. You can't expect one person to do a certain thing. I'm a big fan of the kind of like content flywheel, whereby when you create something, a piece of content, maybe it's an idea for a blog, or maybe it's a session or something like that, to turn it into multiple different things. So that's a blog, maybe a workshop, it could be a conference session, it could be a podcast episode, and you basically make the most of your time. And I think to scale, it's about making the most of our time initially. How can I have the same number of hours as everyone else, but can I create automations? Can I investigate one thing but turn it into multiple pieces that can actually be used in multiple places? Can I, from that, do 3 or 4 different podcast episodes and virtual conferences and things like that? And then it'll come to that state where all of a sudden you feel that pain, and it's like, okay, I need to start breaking this up into multiple roles. And I personally would hire, I've in the past hired to maybe 6, 7, 8 folks before I start to then, and we keep it completely flat until we turn it into a more hierarchical organization. But I would hire in, first of all, different groups. Maybe there's a content group, maybe there's an engineering support group, maybe there's a community group that does meetups, does conferences and things like that. And we each have our own kind of like swim lanes. And then you start scaling them. And typically the content is where, in my opinion, in my experience, I kind of like slowly scale first to create almost like that groundswell. And then you will start finding, as you start building up, there will be certain areas that become more painful. Maybe it's GTM. Okay, we need a growth person. Maybe it's socials. Okay, we need a social manager now. And it's about, as you build into that space, what is the pain? Can we automate it? Can someone in the team take it? Or is it a distraction for them? If it's a distraction for them and it turns into a role, that's the time we need to hire. The biggest concern, though, is about how do we actually grow that DevRel team to a size that the company, the organization, is willing to invest that much money into a DevRel organization. And I think it's interesting because over the years, we've seen that become a harder and harder thing, particularly in recent times.
That is, I think, the biggest question in every developer relations event is like, how do you justify your efforts and headcounts?
Yeah.
So what's the answer for that hard question?
Find someone who has real faith, and find someone who has that real belief in the DevRel motion. I think very often we do a lot of actions and a lot of activities day to day without fully justifying why we do them, because we know it's the right thing to do. Now, I'm not saying we can't measure our activities. I think it's our intention that we need to kind of like, we do things the right way. We want to be able to do things the right way. We believe in a model at Tesla, at Snyk, in this freemium model whereby we get, developers come on board. We build that community, that platform of developers. It's the model of the company. As a result, the model of that company needs a DevRel organization to build that. If you don't have a DevRel organization there, you're fundamentally flooring your model. For those people who work in a company where that's not the case, then you're in real trouble. You're trying to justify your individual actions and then somehow trying to map that to a company goal that doesn't actually fit those actions. And that's where there's a complete breakdown in communication and alignment. So, I say faith. It's more a business model that almost like survives or lives from developers being the true kings, being the folks where growth is key to the success of that business. Yes, there are more stages beyond that, of course, as you go into the enterprise models, enterprise organizations through GTM and things like that, where you more need that top-down approach. But at its core, those companies, those organizations that are truly developer first, you rarely need to justify your existence. It's about, I need this extra person in my team because I want to achieve these things. And it's that expansion and that growth. And if that is one of the things that the organization want, maybe it's a conference, maybe it's to grow that that brand of the organization. How do you measure brand? That's another incredible one where companies are willing to spend millions and millions a year on brand. How do you measure brand versus your sales? It's extremely tough, but it's about faith. It's about working for people who truly believe in DevRel. And I'm sure that's not going to help 90% of people in DevRel right now who probably actually they don't work for companies like that. And that's why it's a constant battle or a constant question for DevRel teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the first time I understood that Slack is a developer first company is when Stuart came on stage and he said, like, I have this napkin of these three most important things in the company. It's enterprise, it's the core product, and it's the developer platform. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Because once you understand that the company ties the developer platform as a key aspect for your company, then you can tie your own actions into clear goals for the company. And then there's no debate whether your organization is needed or not.
Yeah, you're not tying it to revenue, or you're not tying it to leads. You're tying it to the growth of the developers, the developer swell of that platform.
Exactly.
And if that's a core thing for the business model, it's easy to gain investment into those spaces. Then it's about how you when you grow that team, how you show that impact of that extra person or extra few people or extra mini team is actually causing an impact to this developer swell, and that's another key piece.
So, is building developer relations for enterprise different from building developer relations for like indie developers? Do you think that like IBM developer relations is significantly different than Lovable developer relations, for example?
Such a great question. I think for me personally, it depends on which parts of those organizations individuals kind of like live in. For me personally, and I've done both. I love the freedom of a startup, that ability to execute on your ideas with either. It's not about the bureaucracy almost. It's really about the freedom the freedom to kind of like think, and the speed of being able to kind of like act. Like, I have full trust from the CEO down that if I want to do a certain thing, I go ahead and do it, and if I can justify it, that's absolutely fine. I don't need to jump through hoops to do that. I also think, for me as a developer, I love the latest and greatest. I love things that are kind of like cool and latest tech, and integrating with some of the best technologies and latest things in the industry. It makes it easy to be a developer advocate for companies and tools that do those types of things. Developers will love what you do. It's easy to get clicks from that. No, I'm not gonna paint all enterprises that aren't doing that every day, but typically you will see that slowdown in delivery, and you will see that slowdown in, I guess, innovation to market. Not always the case, but largely you will see the startups and smaller companies doing amazing things that is truly pushing every boundary. And so I think it's easier from that point of view to be a developer advocate. Of course, with the bigger enterprises, you're dealing with much bigger customers. You're dealing with people that need enablement for huge teams, for massive organizations, and the requirements and the products are very different. And you're actually trying to show how thousands, tens of thousands of developers can gain adoption, and how almost your product can be not just an ROI for an individual or a small team, but across a globally distributed development organization. So there are absolutely different challenges and different approaches to showing value there. And I think it people will naturally find a fit in one of those spaces. For me, nothing's more exciting than that startup. I'm not going to say stress. What is it? The energy. Let's call it energy, yes. Shall we? Startup energy. Yeah, that's what drives me.
I love that. Talking about cutting edge and the future. Last question for us today is: what is the future of developer relations? Is it all going to be replaced by AI, or will be all using Copilot for developer relations, or maybe there's no need for developer relations because we're not going to have developers anymore? What is your 5 years view on developer relations?
Amir, I hope so, because I'm tired. I've been doing this a long time, Amir. So anything that will finish this will be fine. No, I think we will absolutely still need developers, right? Developers. What a developer will do, what a developer will the experienced developer will need, and the things a developer will do day to day, that will change. There's no question. It's like AI is such a disruptive technology. The way we interact with AI will change over time, and I'm sure the net of who will be qualified to be a developer will broaden, which is a great thing. There will still be huge skill, in my opinion, to build applications that are resilient, that are production ready, and so forth. But it allows us to innovate much, much faster. I think we as developer relations will need to change in the same way, but the challenges are the same. You have a product, you have individuals that are trying to use that product, they are technical, they are developer minded, and there will still be bumps in the road. There will still be documentation and guidance that is needed, enablement that is needed, awareness that is needed. So I do feel the content will change, but I feel like a lot of our actions will differ. Maybe we won't be thinking about SDKs and things like that as much as, MCP servers and whatever the next version of that is gonna build out and look like. But the core challenges for me are the same, and so it's just about that evolution of how will developers change? That will change how we change. But the question is, are there still going to be developer-focused companies? And for me, the answer is yes, but it's going to be not the developer that we expect today, more of that creator-style future. But it's going to be certainly very interesting. I'm definitely going to be here for it. And hopefully in the startup, that changes it all. We'll see.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you so much, Simon, for joining. I think a lot of your experience will benefit a lot of the people in the audience. So thank you for joining.
No, pleasure. Great talking with you.